at this time I'm still hanging around with the guys, hanging around with the gang, and trying to be a family guy, trying to have the family thing going on, but still hanging around, partying with the guys, with the buddies. And still going to jail, still going. I remember my wife visiting me with my oldest son. I remember one time going to a party, backyard party, and got so messed up, man. And I don't really remember what happened, but all I remember was going in there, with a couple of my buddies, coming, getting drunk, and then coming out. And as I'm coming out, I see this large group of guys, at least 10 guys, coming in and started talking trash to each other, and that's all I remember. All I remember waking up at my friend's house, with my face swollen, and they said that I was talking trash to them, and they came at me. They hit me with something. One of my buddies said it was a gun. I'm not sure what it was. I couldn't change. That my life, that was it. The way it wasn't gonna change. That was my destiny.
Welcome to One Way Podcast. I'm your host, Angel Ariola, and today we have with us Rene Rodriguez, and he's going to share a little bit of his testimony, how long he's been saved, and what all the God's doing in his life. So whenever you're ready, bro, just tell us real quick how long you've been saved and how did you come to the church?
I've been saved for about 20 years. It's going to be 21 years this May, actually. We got saved in 2004, and it's been so it's going to be 21 years. Thank God. And the way I came into the church, it was I was living in some apartments on Bandera Road, and I remember clearly that one day, one Saturday morning, I was, I had partied all night and hungover, and I was inside with my girlfriend at the time, and we just arguing because I always party, I always drank, and arguing about the same thing. So I just say, you know what, I'm gonna go outside, throw the trash. I'm gonna go. So I went outside, smoked a cigarette, went to go throw the trash, and as I was throwing the trash, there was this guy working on his car right by the dumpster, and he saw me and he recognized me, and he just, and from there, he at the time he was coming to church, and so he started telling me how God changed his life, and he invited me to church, and he asked me where I lived. So I told, I pointed to the building, to the floor, and to the door where I lived, and he said he invited me to church. So I said, yeah, whatever, he said. I told him, just I didn't really think nothing of it. I said, okay. So that was Saturday, and then I remember, so early in the morning, about 9 in the morning, the next day, on Sunday morning, he came and knocked on the door, and I opened the door, and I was still half asleep. The only reason I was awake because my kids, they were awake, so they wake us up, and so he said, "Hey man, no, you want to come to church?" So I was looking for an excuse. I was just just like, hey, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I was looking for an excuse. What do I say? Like, no, I say no. I was trying to make an excuse. Like, we're not ready, and he was already ready. Dressed up, ready to go to church, and I said, man, no, maybe next time. I told him, maybe next time. We're not ready. The kids aren't ready, and so he said, no. I said, well, it's still early. Church doesn't start until 10:30. So I could wait for you. He said, we could wait for you, and I also, so I trying to make another excuse. I said, well, our car is broken down right now. It's not working. We don't have a car. They're like, well, I got a van. We could just fit. We'll all fit in there, and we'll go. And so I went and said, hold on, man. So I went inside. I told my girlfriend. I asked her, hey, you want to go to church? And she said, she looked at me, and she's like, well, what do we have to lose? Because we're at the bottom already. So we're already done. She was about to leave me. She didn't want nothing to do with me anymore. The only reason we were together, she was with me, is because of the kids. We had 3 kids already. So so she said, then let's go. So we ended up going, man. We ended up going. That was on a Sunday morning, and the first time I ever went. That's the first time I ever been in a Christian church. Never been in a Christian church before. I was raised Catholic, and so it was different for me. We went. It didn't even look like a church. It was a little storefront building with bars in the front. It looked like it used to be a pawn shop actually before, and now it's a church. So, I mean, we were there. I mean, at first I didn't think nothing of it. Everybody started singing loud, and and uh, and so all that stuff was different for me. Uh, so I we stayed there until it was over. At the end of it, I mean, God was dealing with me. Everything that the preacher was saying, it was like he was telling me. I know you hear that a lot, but it's true. Because uh, at the end of it, we bow our heads, and as soon as he said, do you think that do you believe that God, is dealing with you? Do if this is you, everything I said, you can relate to it. Um, you want to change, and God could give you a new life. And so he said, raise your hand if you want to give your life to Jesus. I mean, me and my wife, we didn't even think twice. We knew we needed to change, so we just raised our hand right away, and he called us to the front. Pastor prayed with us, and that's how we. And then we from there, we stayed there. We stayed there. We just never left.
And so that was in 2004.
2004, yeah.
First time ever going to the church.
First time, yeah.
And so, okay, well, so you get saved. And how old were you at the time?
I was 23.
23 years old.
Yeah, 23.
And where were y'all staying at, you said?
It was some apartments. It was near the west side. It was kind of like, very much the west side. Right. It was on Bandera Road.
And that's where you grew up at?
By Hillcrest. I didn't grow up right there, right on that area. Kind of grew up more deep in the west side.
Right. Tell us a little about that, like how you grew up, like your neighborhood, like all that.
Well, I grew up more like deep in the west side. So, but first, I wasn't born here. I was born in Mexico. I didn't get over here. My parents didn't bring us over here until I was about 11 years old. That's when I came over here. So not by choice, but my parents came. They try to like how they say they try to have a better life, and so they came and started working here. At the beginning, it was just them two, my mom and my dad, and then my mom came and joined him, and then probably we stayed over there. Me and my siblings. There is 5 brothers and 1 sister. We stayed in Mexico, for about another year with mainly with my grandma. Most of us, one with my aunt, another one with my aunt, another aunt, but mainly with my grandma. I was with my grandma. So after when I turned 11, about around that time, I remember because I was in 6th grade when we came. So we came because we have an uncle here that that kind of, I guess my dad used to work for him as well. So as when we got here, so right away we had to. The school year wasn't over, so they put us in school. I started in 6th grade, and because usually when you come over from over there, they hold you back a year because they want you to be okay, they want you to be caught up, and so they hold you back a year. But when I came, I had really good grades, and then that they say, you know what, there's no point of holding him back. He has really good grades. We keep him on 6th grade. So the next year, I went to 7th, but it was. So I started going to school here, and it was different, man. It was really at first, man. It was really different. It was really hard. I hated it here. You know, it was crazy because I hated it being here.
Right.
I remember, you know, I didn't want to be here because, you know, I only spoke Spanish.
Right.
And you know, I didn't understand a lot of things that was going on in school. So it was really, really hard, man. But I guess, you know, it was just the beginning. Little by little, you know, began to make friends, and hanging around with kids, you know, not just in school but after school.
Right.
We had a few cousins here that we talked to, so it was, you know, it wasn't that you know, it got better as time went by.
And hold on, before you go, so when you're in Mexico, like growing up, were your parents together?
Yeah, yeah. I always had both of my parents growing up all the way to the age of 18. That's when my dad passed away when I was 18.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, but growing up, they were both there. You know, um, I gotta say, you know, they did their best to raise us good. Actually, you know, when we were in Mexico, um, we were considered the good kids. You know, because we had a lot of cousins over there. We have a lot of cousins, and you know, everywhere there in Mexico, and that town where we lived at.
And what part is that?
That's in Coahuila, in Allende, Coahuila. It's right by the border, right? Maybe like 40 minutes from the border. We have a lot, you know. So growing up, I remember, you know, my parents, they would discipline us. You know, my mom and my dad. Uh, So when we're growing up, you know, we were considered. I remember, you know, that the good kids, you know, because my cousins, they're kind of wild, you know, they were kind of crazy, and they were always getting in trouble, you know. And no, we will get in trouble. You know, a couple of my brothers, they will get in trouble, but not as much. You know, not that, like, we were considered the good kids pretty much until, and that's until coming over here.
Right.
Yeah, that's when I think a lot of things changed. You know, um, when we came over here, you know, hanging out with the wrong crowd.
Right.
Yeah, that's when it started.
And so you came over here, and then where'd you live in the west side?
Yeah, in the west side, the whole time we lived in the west side. Um, there on the same area. Probably moved around a couple of blocks. You know.
Right.
Yeah, but for the
What,
most part,
what did your dad and them do? Like, what did they do for like work?
my dad used to work in construction, and my mom used to work, you know, also, like, you know, in different. She used to work at a factory, at a bakery, uh, and she always had a job, you know. So that they did, you know. That's one thing that I say, you know, they work hard to you know, to support us, and
Right.
they did their best to raise us right. Um, but then, it's not. Now that I look back, it's not enough just to work, you know, but it's just, you know, there's more to it, you know, that I learned now that I'm a father now, you know, that I'm a dad. Uh, Now I see that how different things are needed, not just, you know, putting the food on the table, you know. Uh, that's it, man.
And so, okay, you come over here. You're in middle school, right?
Yeah, I was I was on sixth grade. Yeah,
And
sixth grade.
then tell us about that, all that whole experience. You come over here, you meet new friends, all that.
So at the beginning, like I said, it was fine. You know, I was a good kid. You know, doing good. You know, I had good grades. So it was like a month, 2 months before the year ended when we came here. So after that, they kept me on the sixth grade, but they just said, no way, you just gotta go to summer school just to be safe. You know, just to be good, just to keep up those grades. So I went to summer school as well that year, and then after that, I ended up going to another middle school, and I think that's where, you know, I started getting introduced to more things, you know, that I never seen before. Because,
Right.
you know, I come from a little town in Mexico, and now I'm over here in a big city, and, you know, different things that I'm seeing, you know, and just all doors are like opening, and just, I guess, you know, you're growing up with these kids, and you don't want to say no. You don't want to. you want to fit in, and so that's why I started doing bad things. I remember from seventh grade, in seventh grade, you know, just little simple things like started smoking, because I'll see my friends, and so seventh grade, and started smoking. Started, that's when I remember I got introduced to weed. Started smoking weed in seventh, eighth grade.
And so in Mexico, did you ever experience any of that?
Uh, there was a couple of times I remember, even as a little kid, maybe like 11, to 10, a couple of times probably smoked, took a little smoked a cigarette with a friend or something, just but not even knowing what we were doing. But um, but over here, that's when I started stealing cigarettes from my parents,
Right.
things like that, and then I remember got introduced to weed there in middle school. Well, just walking home from school, we walked like 20, 30 minutes uh, to school, and then 20, 30 minutes back home every day, and just with the friends hanging around, just in that little time, and I would smoke, and get into fights. Started getting into fights as well. Uh, Stuff like little things like that. I remember as in middle school, that's when I first met a guy there, and also another kid like my age selling joints. So I started buying, just joints, from this guy, and just smoking them on the way home. And so not only that, so it also with my brother's friends, I'm kind of like always kind of like the younger. Uh, I have four older brothers.
And so all y'all came over at the same time?
More or less, yeah. Mainly the two oldest, they took longer because they were already kind of, I guess, they were a little bit older and they had girlfriends. They were gonna get married. Or one of them got married, and the other one was planning to get married. So they wanted to stay in Mexico. They were already, I think, over 18. Uh, so only uh, four of us at the time came. It was three of my brothers, two older brothers, one little brother, and then a little bit after that, my little sister. We only have one sister. My little sister also came. So yeah, so having two older brothers, kind of look up to them, and at the time, and so you know, started hanging out with the same thing, the same kind of people, so you want to do what they do.
Right. So I was gonna ask you earlier, when you were over there, did you ever think about ever coming over here, or did you ever hear like stories that because when you're from the United States, right, you hear stories about other countries, and like did they ever cross your mind like, oh, being in the United States, like I'm sure like watching movies, like, oh, I would like to do this, that, like stuff that you don't see over there? Was it
when
like that?
when I was little, that never crossed my mind that I was gonna one day end up over here.
Right.
I was when you're a kid, you don't know.
Right.
I wasn't. I'm not gonna say I was, because there was people that had less than me, people that have more. So
Right.
when you're little, you don't know. You don't know when you have what you have, what you don't have. You're happy. You have friends. All you care is about playing with your friends.
Right.
You have your mom, your dad. A family, and you just you're just a kid. So when I was a kid, I never thought about one day I'm gonna go.
Right.
I never really thought about it. Just actually, like I said, when I got here after being here for maybe a month or so, I remember I hated it here. When I was 11 years old, I would tell my parents I want to go back. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to Mexico. It's crazy, but yeah. So
And so, okay, you're say 12, 13 when you start experiencing drugs and all that, you're saying?
yeah, I would say I was in about eighth grade. That's when I started smoking weed.
And your parents?
My parents, that's like I said, they were hard workers, but that was not, sometimes it could be a bad thing,
Right.
because I remember my dad, he worked, he'll leave in the morning before we wake up. He won't be home until 6, 7 at night, right? So, and my mom, she worked maybe, she will go in maybe at noon, and wouldn't get out until 9, 10 at night.
Mm.
So there was a window, a gap where we would go home and we would just be by ourselves. So we didn't really have to go home, right away. We'll hang around. Most of the time, at first I would go home, but after a while you meet new friends. Oh no, let's go play basketball. So you go play basketball, But also, you go play basketball, but you're gonna, you know, uh, smoke and things like that. Uh, so that's why I say it was kind of necessarily not a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like that way people could see. Like, so you come over here. What year was that when you came over here?
I want to say so. I was about 11, so that has to be 2000. I know it was. Is it 2000? No, it's 1991. 90. I mean, yeah, about 91.
91, right?
Yeah.
So
1991.
And then you come over here. You move in the west side. So, and especially here in San Antonio, I know growing up, people who are older than me, gang violence and all that was around like in the 90s, right? Heavy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, how was that? Like, did you get involved in stuff like that?
So like at the beginning, like I say, I don't know anything. So
Right.
things that I know now, you know, how it used to be. Like I was a kid, from Mexico coming over here. Didn't think like there was no. People would think, oh, that's nowadays, oh, this is dangerous. But to me, that wasn't dangerous. I didn't know what was going on. And even if I watched the news, I didn't know what was going on. I never seen gangs and drugs like that. People hooked on drugs, hooked on heroin. Because you see, I saw a lot of that. Growing up in the West Side, people hooked on drugs, on heroin, and now I know it's crack, coke. Uh, things like that. People sniffing spray paint. Um, Drinking. Just I would see, people on the sidewalks, by the corner store, just drunk or in drugs, homeless. I didn't see any of that,
Right.
growing up. I mean, over there in Mexico, but now I'm looking at this and this is new for me, So, but like I said, you start adapting to it, and so I grew up. So I started kind of seeing more in middle school. I see how the gangs, how gangs were, a big thing in middle school. I remember in 8th grade, I would see this, gang fights in middle school all the time. I mean, I saw a guy, a guy got a pencil and right in front of me in the classroom. He got a pencil and he stuck it in the other guy's eye, and his eye just popped out. And then there was another time walking home, right in front of me, like maybe a block away from me, the same spot where I walked to, a drive by, and a guy gets shot. A young kid like my age gets shot on the leg, and so that started becoming normal. Now like little by little it starts becoming normal to seeing those things.
Right.
And it was just a matter of time that I was gonna get involved. I would think like, what, one day, and at the same time you think it's cool.
Right.
You're little, you think it's cool because you see the same guys that get into fights and everything, and they got all these friends. They got all this group, their gang and stuff. So you see that stuff, so you kind of get attracted to that.
Right.
You want that.
And so now but you're there like almost 2 years now, and you already start meeting friends, and I mean, how did you pick up like on the languages? Did they put you like in certain like class, or it just like you came over here and you just picked it up?
At the beginning, they do put you in the class, the ESL class,
Right.
the English as second language, but there's also a lot of kids that also from Mexico. They're everywhere. Even back then there was not as much as now, but there was a lot of kids, from Mexico, or that just have parents that they're from Mexico and they also speak Spanish.
Right.
And they, so those friends I would. So, but in the neighborhood, I started meeting other friends that there in the neighborhood. So we started playing basketball. You started hanging around with them and things like that. So, yeah.
And then, so what about your other brothers that, or where they come in at? Like, did they ever get involved in all that?
Yeah. So actually, though, yeah. So they were a little bit older, and I see them, getting involved in gangs and drugs. Gangs mainly. Getting involved in gangs. They started dressing like that. Now they started dressing like gangs and having the bandana and you know the colors and you see that and you see their friends and and so I'm younger than them, so uh, I still don't have friends like that, but they have their own friends and they come around every once in a while. They're friends and you see them and but I'm just a little kid at the time, and but I'm seeing this, and you like that, you want that. But little by little started hanging around too with their friends, and I started seeing things. So every like not every weekend, but every now and then on the weekends, my parents they will go spend the weekend in Mexico. At first, we will go with them, especially in the summer. We'll go with them and spend summer over there in Mexico and maybe the weekend. But after a while, like my brothers, they now they have friends, even girlfriends, and so they don't want to go. They don't
Here
want
on this side now,
to,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So they want to stay here. So I started staying as well here while my parents go to Mexico. So I began to stay with them. But so when they leave, my brothers, pretty much they have a party at the house.
Right.
So they leave maybe Friday night, Saturday, and then they don't come back till Sunday.
Right.
And so my brothers, the teenagers, at this time they're probably like 17, 16, 17.
And you were what, like 14?
You
Yeah.
know, and my brothers are so they just you just having we're having all these people, all these other gang members in the house, and just people that party, and that you just, I mean,
Yeah.
that became another thing that became normal to me, just to see that, people coming around, my brother's friends coming around and partying,
Right. That's crazy how you're
they were,
saying. My bad, but like, I was picturing you when you were in Mexico, didn't know nothing. Couple years later, fast forward, now you and your brothers are caught up. Like everything they're doing over here on this side, y'all doing the culture, the gangs, and it's kind of
yeah,
like I was thinking, like, really, I just got caught up doing the same thing over here now. Like y'all
yeah,
just kind of got like Americanized in a way. I'm saying that
yeah.
with the gangs and all that.
Yeah, no, it sucks you up, if you're not careful. If the parents are not careful, they come over here, they want to have a better life, but it ends up being a nightmare sometimes. It could be
Right.
end up. Thank God that you know uh, most of us, my brothers, we made it out of that, and we're alive and and still here, and then thank God we turned our life, turned our life around, but a lot of them they don't,
Right.
a lot of kids they don't, they die, they're in prison, they're still doing drugs, and I know that because that's where I was by the grace of God that I'm here now. But so so I was watching all this, right? I mean, I started watching all this when I was about 14. I said 14 and to 15, they were having parties, my brothers, I remember, they even started their own gang.
Hmm.
Then my brother started their own, gang. Him, and them, and other friends that they had, and so now they're having initiations in our backyard, during the weekends when my parents are away. So now I'm watching guys getting rolled into the gang in my backyard, and I mean, it was crazy. And so they just get rolled in, they get beat up, and they get up, and they just, everybody's drinking and smoking, and uh, doing drugs, doing coke mainly. It was first just started with drinking and smoking weed, and then later on they got, started doing coke.
And did your parents ever catch on to it? Things you were doing?
I mean,
They try
yeah.
to hide it.
Yeah, I mean, my brothers try to hide it, and my brothers, I mean, they eventually caught up to them. One of my brothers, they started going to jail, started getting arrested. You know, um, they started getting arrested. So my brothers, they one of them went to TYC juvenile, then TYC first, and then the other one he was already 18, so he will go to Barry County Jail.
Wow.
So they will go and I mean sometimes they'll for my older brother sometimes he'll get bailed out, uh, maybe by his girlfriend or or I don't know. I'm not sure if my parents ever bailed him out, but my other brother he did a few months. I want to say maybe 6 months. He went to placement or TYC. So so he stayed. They will start. So my parents knew, but kind of. I mean, I noticed that my parents. I mean, they'll get mad at them, but they really didn't do anything. Because they still kept on doing things. Uh, Started breaking this. One of my brothers, he started breaking into cars with other friends, and sometimes I will go along with them just for the ride. Just we'll go and I mean, I wouldn't break into a car. I didn't know how to turn on the car, but I will go get in and just we'll go for the joyride. Go for the joyride and to steal whatever we could from the car and then dump it, crash it and break the windows and leave it there. And I remember sometimes, there was a couple of times where uh, one of my brother's friends will bring a car to the house and they'll search it, they'll take whatever they want and then they'll take it back. They'll just go dump it. They'll be at the end of my backyard for a little bit and they will just take it, I remember sometimes I would even go through it too, just see what I could find. But it was so I started, so
that's crazy how like y'all came over here to kind of get like, I guess I want to say kind of like a better life.
Yeah.
And then I wonder if your parents ever thought that, man, we try to bring them over here and they end up being worse.
Yeah, but that was their intention for my parents. My parents had good intentions and they wanted to give us a better life. Over there in Mexico, it was if you don't have a good job, a business, it's hard.
Right.
I mean, you don't make anything. What people make here in in a day, some people it takes them a whole week or even a month to make what someone makes here in a day.
Wow.
So that's one thing that I know now that I'm grateful for. Because yeah, it's pretty hard over there, man.
Yeah.
I mean, for people that live over there, it's they're used to it. People like it there, and they learn how to live, there with what they have, and they make the best of it, and people are happy,
Right.
But because they don't know, they live with what they have. So.
Right. All right. So now you're starting to get into the drugs, the breaking into cars or helping them out. So your brothers are doing it. Now you're starting to get your own little lifestyle in that, right? The little gangs and all that.
So yeah, after so I started hanging, so that some of the friends those friends kind of this that were there with my brothers. I know some of them they got locked up. They went to prison. You know, you just didn't hear about them no more, and but so as I went to high school, that's when I started going to high school. I remember that's when I got for a little bit I got deeper into the weed.
What high school you go to? What high school you go to?
So I went to a couple of them. First, I went to Edgewood High School, but now it's shut down. They shut it down. I can't remember the year, but so I went there for ninth grade, and then the next year they shut down ninth grade. But I flunked, so I couldn't go there anymore. So so I had to move to the other school closer, which was Memorial High School. And
both ghetto schools.
Yeah. I mean, but at the time you don't think.
Yeah.
That's all I knew. It's not like I came from the north side to
the
west side.
Right.
To me, it was still good. I mean, over there, schools are not. They're a lot. Over there they don't have what we have over here.
Right.
It's a big school, so to me it wasn't. I wouldn't say it's ghetto or it's poor or anything like that because.
You're new to it.
Yeah, to me it was. Hey, they have there was a school with air conditioning. Over there it wasn't like that. The elementary school I went over there, it didn't have air conditioning.
Yeah.
They had a water cooler and the windows open. That's how I went to. There were no hallways. You had to get out of the classroom to outside and then go to the other classroom. So so to me it was good. Uh, and also you will get free lunch over here. Over there they don't give you free lunch. You have to take your own lunch.
Yeah.
So it was different. So like I said, I didn't know it was ghetto.
Right.
But to a lot of people that so I went to when I started going on ninth grade, I met another friend there, and he lived by where I lived. So I kind of began to talk to him a little bit. He spoke Spanish, so at the time still I was kind of I was learning English already, but I was still speaking mainly Spanish, and so we would walk together. So start with so he started smoking, so we start smoking there. So after that, he invites me over to one of his friends that lives by the house, but he goes to another school. But usually they will meet after school there at his house, and they will smoke out there. They will they play basketball and just mess around. So I started doing that, and every day just going over there, and smoking. About 6 o'clock, go home all stoned, all messed up, and just hungry and tired, and and I remember one of those days that I came home all messed up, all stoned, man. I was all high, and my dad he had just gotten there too, like he was like a 6, 7, and I was just there sitting in the living room, and he just say, "Hey, what's wrong with you?" Like nothing, but I was all messed up, and he was just saying, "What's wrong with you?" What? So he was getting mad at me, and I don't really remember what he said, but he was trying to get mad at me. But I was all stoned, man, and so yeah, so that was in ninth grade, and the first time ninth grade. So after that, I had to move to the other school, um, and I made new friends over there, and that's when I started. I think it started more in the gangs there in that school. Uh, started more like a started like a group of guys. We started just hanging around, and at that time, what was very popular was tagging.
Right.
Tagging was very popular, and so everybody was tagging. Even older gang members. Everybody liked to tag, and so I started tagging. And I remember we had a crew, like a crew of taggers, right? So we started tagging. And there was a few other crews there. So I started getting into that and tagging on the streets and everywhere we could. Everywhere we just tag everywhere, man. And we'll go in the middle of the night in tight places, and so I started getting into trouble. I got arrested for tagging a couple of times as a juvenile. Went to juvenile. Um, I remember the same cop arrested me twice, probably in a month. And the first time he said, "If I ever catch you tagging again, he said, I'm gonna kick your butt." No, not in those words, but he said, "I'm gonna kick your butt. I'm gonna beat you up." And so he took me to juvenile. My parents, my mom had to go pick me up, and that's kind of when I started going down, more downhill. And the next couple of weeks, he called me again, the same cop, and he's like, "Hey, didn't I just catch you last time? What did I tell you? I told you I was gonna kick your butt when next time I catch you." And I remember I was like, "Dang it." I couldn't say anything. So, because I remember it was like at midnight. While I'm walking down the street to my buddy's house, but when I'm going, I'm tagging, and I'm riding on the sidewalk on the curb. And I remember as soon as at the corner it comes, and I had just tagged, the cops just he hits that corner, and he sees me, and I like, oh man. So I throw the spray paint, and I just keep on walking like nothing. And he pulls over and he saw that, he smelled the paint, got me saying, and so he handcuffed me after he told me that, and he sat me down in the back seat, and after he sat me down, he kicked me on my ribs. He kicked me a couple of times on my ribs, and he was mad. He was pissed because he had called me before.
Yeah.
and another cop got there, and he just said something. And then so he took me down the street to an elementary school, and it was like behind the barracks, the little mobile classrooms there. So he took me behind there, and he took me out, and he slammed me against it was dark, man. He slammed me against the car, and he just started, he started kneeing me kneeing me on the back of my legs.
Wow.
Like just like, and hitting me on my back, on the sides, until I couldn't take it no more, and I fell down. And I fell down. And as soon as I fell down, he got me up, he took me back in the car, and he took me to juvenile.
And you're handcuffed.
I'm handcuffed, yeah. So he took me to juvenile, and so and so yeah. And after that, and then my mom had to go pick me up again, and it was just just one thing after another. After that, so this tagging crew that we had, it was all just for fun, to tag. But it always, any crew, any group of kids, that looking for trouble or partying, there's always gonna be trouble. So this tagging crew became like a gang now, because we started just by simple, like crossing somebody out, on the street, and or tagging on somebody's neighborhood, you get enemies like that. So little by little, just like started getting enemies, and we started getting a lot of enemies there in the high school that we were going. So now we're just tagging and partying. Now we're just, fighting almost every day in the high school. And in the high school, after school, so by this time, I remember me and a couple of my buddies, we broke into a house. We broke into a house, and as it was actually down the street from my house. They were one of my buddies is like, "Hey man, I always see this house. There's nobody there. At this during the day, they leave and say, let's go kick in the door, and let's go see what we could find. Let's go." And so I said, "Let's go, let's do it." So we went, and one of my friends, they kicked in the door, and we just went in there, and just try to go through everything, try to find stuff. We didn't really get much for that, there. We just, that wasn't the first time, but we were just doing it just to buy weed, just to have a few bucks. But so that happened, and somebody, I guess somebody saw us, and it was during the day. So somebody saw us, and they pulled us over later on. Me and my brother, they pulled us over. I believe, I can't remember exactly, but they pulled us over. They identified me. I think the only one that identified was me. They didn't identify the other guys. There was a couple of other guys, and I didn't say anything. So they just got me. So I went to jail for that. Now this is not a misdemeanor. It's a felony. Going on, having breaking into a house is a felony. So they sent me to TYC. At 16, I was 16 at this time. They sent me to TYC for a year. It was they only gave me 9 months, but nobody really gets out of the 9 months there. You have to go through the program, through the phases, and then and so they sent me away for it was a total of about 11 months, and they put me, most of the time I was over there in by a facility by Dallas. So I was there pretty much a whole year, and it just, but after that, after I did my no, I went with the mentality there because as soon as I got there, people would tell me like, you know what, no, nobody leaves early. You always get more time because they're nothing but kids, man, nothing but teenagers from 12, 13 years old all the way up to 20, and sometimes there was a couple of 21-year-old guys, but nothing but young people, and always there. Oh, everybody wants to fight, so they say, well, you always gotta defend yourself. So man, it was so I went with that mentality. You know what? I'm just gonna do my time. I'm gonna do right. And I'm gonna get out. I hated it in there. I didn't want to be in there at all. I didn't want to be. I mean, I was in juvenile, a couple of times for a few months, but now I'm all the way over there by Dallas. I'm far away from my family from San Antonio. So I just wanted to get out. So I ended up getting out. 11 months, came back out, and now this group, man, this tagging crew that it was only a few of us, it had grown, man. It was like a bunch of guys now. You know, it was I mean, people that guys that I didn't know. I come back out, and I go to my friends. They're throwing a little get together, a little party. Start because I get out, and we just start drinking and everything. And all these guys, I mean, guys coming up to me, like say, hey man, I'm so and so, and they knew who I was because of my friends. They're my friends. I have my buddy, my friend, Renee, he's locked up. He's gonna come out or whatever. They knew me by that. But now it's like a big, crew, man. And I mean, you're talking about I can't remember how many, but there was a lot more than when I went in. So, and now not only that, so getting involved in all this, the same guys, again, and now we have more, I guess, more enemies. I hear a lot of other stories that how while I was locked up, I mean, they got shot at, they got jumped, they will go to the club, get into fights. That's while I was locked up, and when I get out, I'm 17, and started doing the same thing. Started, as soon as I get out, I started doing the same thing, drinking, smoking, doing drugs. But I'm on parole. I'm on parole for 9 months. They put me on parole at 17, and so when I start getting high, and then I go report, and I'm afraid that I'm gonna come out dirty. So I was doing okay for a little bit until again, me and my buddy, we got caught spray painting, tagging. So again, so we got caught tagging
after you got out of the basement and all that.
So so now I'm at this time I'm 18. I'm still on parole. I got maybe a couple of months left, and I get caught tagging. So I'm 18 now. I go to Bexar County Jail. So I just turned 18. I go straight to the Bexar County Jail. They're not juvenile. But I didn't tell my parole officer. And then court date comes. They call my parole officer. My parole officer comes to the court, and she says, well, how come you didn't tell me? I could have just revoked you, send you back to TYC, but now you belong to the adult probation officer. Yeah. Now they're gonna put you. So they put me on adult probation officer. Adult probation for I believe they gave me a year of probation for that, and but still, I only lasted a few months, and I violated that, came out dirty, and then from that day, man, it was just all the way to like I was 20, man. It was just in and out of Bexar County. Like it was just I would go and spend a couple of months in county jail, come out, time served, just in and out of county. I was like, people would say that was my second home. I was always there. Even the guards call us like, hey, you just got out. You just got out a couple of months ago, man. You're back. Because it was just like a game. It just came to started seeing it like just nothing. Bexar County just to me it was like a break. Because I would party so much. Get drunk, get high, and you just go over there and sleep. most of the time.
Yeah.
So it was like a little break, so it was not. I didn't care, I started getting this mentality, not caring, after so many years, just I guess of abusing myself, not caring anymore,
Right. And then in the time, so you said before you got saved, you did this. You're like 20. You got saved at 23. And then time you had kids and all in between all this time or no? From
I started having kids when I was 18.
okay, okay, okay.
Yes, I started having kids when I was 18, and that, I mean, like I said, I was all into the party, and I didn't care. I said I know I loved my kids and everything, but I wasn't showing it. I was
Right,
selfish.
right.
I was selfish. I was, just wanted to party. Hang around with my friends. All the time. I didn't care about the kid's mom. I wasn't the man that I needed to be. So I would just kept on partying. I started having kids. I had two kids. I had two kids at 18, uh, uh, with two different girls. Uh, but the first girl I wasn't with, and then I had a kid, and then I had a kid with a guy with this other girl, and I had a kid with her, but I stayed with her. So they were like, they were only like 6 months apart, and and like I say, I didn't care. I wasn't. I was real selfish. Didn't care what they thought. At the time, I said, well, they don't want to be with me. She don't want to be with me.
And you weren't working or nothing.
So I had got kicked out of high school. I went to high school for 4 years, but I spent 2 years in ninth grade and 2 years in 10th grade.
Hmm.
So I didn't even. I think in the next year, that's when I got kicked out. The fifth year, at the beginning of the fifth year, I got kicked out. I had just passed to the 11th grade, and I got into a fight, and I had just turned 18. And so they said, "Nah, you're already 18. We don't want you here." So they
Yeah.
kicked me out. And like I'm telling you, like got into a fight at school. Even though they came at me, because I was, from all of my friends, I think it was just me and another guy, or maybe I was the last one there, or maybe the two of us. It was like only two of us at the time, and the school was filled with the rivals, the enemies that we would call it. And so, they would just, I mean, I remember they in the hallway, they surrounded me, coming down the stairs, they surrounded me, and they just stood there, and I just looked at them. I said, "No." I said, "What are y'all gonna do? I gotta do something." And I remember, because I was stupid, man. I was dumb. I didn't think. These guys could have had a knife or something, and
Right.
stabbed me. But I was dumb, and I remember, like, nobody would do anything. They would just like laughing at me, or like kind of mad dogging me. And when I about to turn around and walk away, and I told them, "Yeah, yeah, ain't gonna do nothing." And I was about to walk away. I remember just one guy jumped out from the back, and he just punched me in the back of my head. And that's when I turned around, and we started fighting. And after that, they kicked me out.
Hmm.
So yeah, so they kicked me out at 18. I after that, right after that, that's when um, my my girlfriend, which is my wife now, got pregnant, and so I started having kids at that age. I didn't have a job, but I I did. I went and got a job. I remember my first job. It was working at Chili's as a busboy.
Hmm.
You know, And so that didn't last long. It was lasted like maybe 2 months, and I didn't go back. Just didn't want to.
Right,
Didn't want to
right.
go back. So I got another couple little jobs at a factory too. I got a factory, a candle factory. I worked there for a few months, and then at this time, I already had my first kid, my first son. I already had my daughter, but when my wife, I had my first son, and then and then I started getting into the construction. And but at the same time, at this time I'm still hanging around with the guys, hanging around with the gang, and trying to be a family guy, trying to be try to have the family thing going on, but still hanging around, partying with the guys, with the buddies. And still going to jail, still going. I remember my wife visiting me with my oldest son, in Berry County back then. I don't know. I don't think they have it anymore, but I think they don't have the glass no more, right?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, so they used to have the glass. I would see my son through the glass, now I think it's a screen. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, so my wife will go over there and visit me, and I'll be there for a couple of months, come out, and and then it was just me still going to parties, still going out,
Right.
By the grace of God, I just got, I'm alive because I remember one time going to a party, backyard party, and got so messed up, man. And I don't really remember what happened, but all I remember was going in there, with a couple of my buddies, coming, getting drunk, and then coming out. And as I'm coming out, I see this large group of guys, at least 10 guys, coming in and started talking trash to each other, and that's all I remember. I remember waking up at my friend's house, with my face swollen, and they said that I was talking trash to them, and they came at me. They hit me with something. One of my buddies said it was a gun. I'm not sure what it was. They hit me with something and they knocked me out, and they just started kicking me there in the floor, and then until they left. My buddy said they put me in the car. I think that they were holding a gun up to them. They couldn't do anything, and so that's what happened. I remember waking up at my buddy's house. My face swollen. I couldn't open one eye, and with this massive headache. And my buddies remember. I remember my buddies telling me, "Hey, you want to go to the hospital?" I'm like, "Nah, man, I don't want to go to the hospital. Just give me a beer, man."
Yeah.
Just yeah, I don't want. No, it just a couple of times, that just happened like that, man. Got beat up, got jumped. This it just
And this is already you're already like 20 years old.
by that time. No, at that time I was probably like 19.
Oh, okay.
19, in between 19 and 18. Yeah, because it was just like I said, in and out of jail, man. In and out of jail, just getting into fights,
And so you were doing this all the way until you met that guy at the apartments from the church.
Well, it kind of had already chilled out a little bit, but it's still the only thing I was doing at the time. It was mainly partying, like doing drugs. Because doing drugs, the gang thing had already kind of calmed down. A lot of the enemies, my buddies, kind of chilled. Kind of some of them actually went to prison. One of my buddies at the time, actually, we were in high school, he did a drive by at the high school, and shot two guys right there, right down, maybe a block away from the high school. Shot two guys. He went to prison for, I don't know. I think it was 7 years. And so he was gone for a while. And then I remember a couple of buddies. I mean, one of them, I think it was he overdosed. People overdosing. You know, uh, going to jail. Some of them kind of settled down. They moved out, and so it was kind of, it wasn't the same friends anymore. So now I kind of, by maybe 20, 21, I got really started doing a lot of cocaine. Because when I came, remember when I told you when I came out, so we're hanging around my buddy's house, and then that neighborhood there was a lot of crack. They would sell crack. So a couple of my buddies got into selling crack. So they would just stand out there and sell crack, and then uh, also heroin and that cocaine, a little bit of that. Uh, Down the street there was, we'll get a cocaine and stay up all night. We'll stay up all night there, just partying and drinking, and then going to parties in the weekends and just doing that stuff. And but yeah, so because of that, by the time I'm 20, by 2021, I'm already hooked on cocaine. I'm doing a lot of it. I'm doing a lot of it, and we have started setting a little bit here and there, just you know. So it wasn't a lot. It would just get a little bit. We'll sell it. We'll do most of it. We'll party, and and after that, a little bit after that, about 2021. We started doing heroin as well, snorting it. I think I never shot it up, but I started snorting it, snorting heroin here every now and then. So that was, and so it was a lot of drinking, coke, and heroin that we started doing that. And so that's about 2021 doing that stuff, and now, but now I already have about 4 kids now at this time, and still selfish, still didn't. I tried to live like, we had an apartment. We had like 3 different apartments. We'll always move out, we'll fall behind on the rent and just move to another one. And it was just, it was just little by little, it was just getting worse and worse, man. It was just I was getting more addicted to drugs. There was more fighting, more arguing in the house, with my girlfriend. And then on top of that, I started paying with my other kid. I started paying child support, so that was another thing to argue about it now, because of that.
And all this, like growing up, you didn't grow up religious, right? You didn't grow up in church and none of that.
The only time I remember when I was little, my grandma, she was real Catholic. She was real Catholic, and she would take us to church every Sunday when we were little. Yeah, so, and the Catholic church, yeah.
Right.
But that, I mean, it was just going to church, it was nothing like.
Right. And so in all this, when you're the drugs and fighting with your girlfriend and all that, did you kind of know, like, man, I'm tripping, I'm messing up, or was it like I'm just living my life?
Well, to tell you the truth, I knew I came to a point where I knew I was messed up, and I knew that I couldn't, I didn't think like I believed in God, right? I knew there was a God. I grew up in Catholic, but I thought that in a way like, what, as long as I wear my cross, I had a cross, I had a ring with Jesus' face, and so I thought it was okay. I had a picture of the Saint Virgin Mary. I believed in that. I believed all that, stuff like that. So I thought, as long as I try to do a little bit of good, I'm okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't think like, I didn't think. So I came to a point. I remember I came to a point where, like, what, I'm not gonna change. This was 23, right before I got saved, maybe 22. Yeah, I'm not gonna change. I try to change. I remember one time, she probably doesn't remember this, but my mom told me, she told me, because she would always see us, me and my wife, fight and argue and get ugly, and she would say, no, you're never going to change. You just leave her alone, just leave her, let her live her life. And, because my wife, she didn't drink, she didn't party, she didn't smoke, she started every now and then she tried it when she hung around with certain people, but I think she tried a couple of times, but she was not like that. She was just trying to be a mom, trying to be a good mom and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I came to a point where, like, if you were to ask me then, where was I gonna be in 5 years? That was some of the questions I remember people asking. Like, in your school, they ask you, where are you gonna be in 5 years? If you were to ask me then, what are you gonna do in 5 years? Where are you gonna be in 5 years? I probably would have told you, I'm probably gonna be dead or in prison.
Right.
Because I remember coming close to probably dying of an overdose, or or getting killed, like I mentioned at the party. There was another time that another guy just going into a party, through the backyard to the side, bumped into this guy. We just bumped in, we knew who he was and everything, but we just bumped in, and I'm high drunk, he's high drunk, and bumped in, and we turned around, we looked at each other, and then we say what's up, and I remember this guy, he says, "Oh, what's up?" And he took out a gun and pointed it on my face, and I'm high and drunk, and I say, "What are you gonna do with that? Are you gonna do something?" I put it away, you know, and and I don't know what would have happened, but my buddy that was there too, he knew him more, so he stepped in and he got in the middle, and he said, "No, no, we're cool, man. It's with me." He told him, "Yeah, we're together, we're with me," and man, a couple of times, man, that I like, man. Now that I look back, I say, man, thank God, man.
Yeah, God spared you.
Not only that, but driving drunk, even my wife, she tells me now, man, I don't know how you got home sometimes. You were drunk and you drove home. And driving drunk and stuff like that, man, just all the mess, man, and I look back and I'm like, man, that was so stupid, man. It was a horrible, man, lifestyle. And then I think about it now that that me and my wife look back and look at our kids, and I like, man, I would never let. I see my my kids when they're like 15, 14, and looking at them and say, man, I would never let them go that way, go places like that, the places that we used to go, at that age. I will go downtown, hang around downtown, go to the carnival, go to the fiesta with just friends at 15, 16 years old. It was crazy, man. Like, you're just hanging around there, getting high on the bus, and just from crazy things, man. And look at my kids, I'm like, man, I would never let them do that, But that's life without Jesus, That's how it is, man.
Right. So you're going through all that. Fast forward to where you get saved, and so whenever like you talk to that guy, were you already at a point like, okay, I need to get saved, or is it like because you said when you met him, he invited you to church, and then the very next day, and you were still trying to get out of it, but it was something. Was it something like, man, maybe I should try this, or were you just going just to get him off your back?
No, well, see, at that point, I wasn't. Nobody really had. I've heard. There was only one time that I remember. They're at the same apartment. That some young kid, like, they were from a church nearby, and he came, and he was outreaching. He was passing out invitation and inviting people to church. And this young kid, man, he was young, man. He was probably, I want to say, like 16. And he knocks on my door, and I open the door, and he just starts inviting me to church, and he starts telling me about Jesus. He witnessed to me, and I'm listening to his guy, and he has my attention. I remember, and but the thing about this guy, that's it. I mean, he just told me that, and he invited me to church, and he took off. I guarantee you, like, if this guy would have asked me, "Do you want to pray?" I would have prayed right there, man, because I was God. I mean, he had my attention. It was something like wow, like I was really like, and I was kind of inside of me. I was kind of saying like, okay, tell me more. I want to know more. But he just told me that, and then he took off. Maybe about 5 minutes talking, and maybe less. But yeah, so at this time, so me and my girlfriend are just, we have 3 kids. She's already done with me. We're always fighting, always arguing. We're about to lose the apartment. I'm working very little. Like, I'm working in construction, but not I would miss a lot. Call in because I would party, and I remember just she was just tired of me. She was like, she was just tired of me. She didn't want to she didn't want to be with me anymore, and she she was. I remember in that she would leave me. She would leave me something. She would go. She would take off to her mom's, and I'll stay by myself. And every time I would stay by myself, imagine, you party, you have an apartment by yourself. What are you gonna do? Gonna party some more? Now she's not here. I'm gonna party. So I would get high, get drunk there in the apartment. I don't have to go anywhere and get high no more. So, but I remember one time when I was there by myself, I was I remember I was asleep in the morning, early in the morning, sleeping in my bed in the bedroom, and as I'm sleeping, I I I feel this something there in my room. I'm not saved, never been to church yet, haven't been to church yet. So I feel and I'm asleep though, but I'm looking at my room, but I'm asleep, and I see this black shadow standing on the front by my door, by the bedroom door, and I'm asleep still, but I could see myself, I could see that shadow, and just in a moment, in an instant, that shadow comes on top of me, and I can't breathe. And it was horrible, man. I got really scared that time. I remember, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything. I'm trying to, and I just remember just getting up, just gasping for air, like this was really happening.
Right.
Like I couldn't breathe, and so, and that stayed in my mind, for a long time, and I was kind of afraid now, like, dang, am I gonna die? And I really thought about it. But so until then, until 2004, that's when, like I said, my wife, she was just done. She just was looking for a way out, and that's it. And I came to a point when I didn't care anymore. I didn't care anymore about, if she left me. I said, you know what, you leave me, I don't care. If I get locked up, I don't care. If I go to prison, I don't care. Thank God I never did. I never ended up in prison. But I came to a point, I don't really care if what happens. I just wanted to get high, get drunk. I didn't think I could change. So that's when I went to go throw the trash, and I met this guy. So he invited me to church. I didn't really think about it. I didn't really think of nothing like, what, this is real. I didn't think nothing like that. Uh, he just gave me a simple invitation. He didn't really get deep. He just invited me to church, pretty much.
Right.
He told me a little bit that God changed his life. Because actually, I forgot to tell you, but this guy, I had worked with this guy about 4 years before that. I knew him a little bit. I worked with him maybe for a couple of months, and then he went to another trade, and then we meet again there, and he recognized me, and so we started. That's how we started talking, and so he invited me. We went to church, got saved, man. Got the first day, me and my wife, we raised our hands, and we just, we knew. I knew this is what I need.
Right.
I like, man, this is real. Like, and then little by little, coming to church, I started hearing testimonies, more of guys there in the church, and people how God changed their lives. Pastor, how God changed his life, how he got saved in jail. That he was a pothead. He was, he used to, he used to drink and stuff like that. So I like, hey man, that sounds a lot like me. A lot of these people, sound a lot like me, like the way what I'm going through. And so I like, man. So I said, you know what? This is what I need. This is what I need. So I'm saying, I've been going to church, but I'm still kind of struggling with partying. I'm still struggling with coke and doing heroin and drinking. So in the weekend, I will go back. On Friday, I will go back to party with my buddies, and I party all night. Come back. So I will party all night, Saturday night, all the way to Sunday morning. And this whole time I'm partying with my friends, I'm not feeling bad, really. I just know that Sunday's coming and I'm going to go to church. So I'm telling my buddies, you know what, I'm going to go to church tomorrow. I began to tell them even then. I said, I started going to church, but not really witnessing. They just telling them, I didn't know much. I didn't know anything, about witnessing. I just telling them, I started going to church, and then Sunday morning, we're partying Sunday morning, 5, 6 in the morning. I tell them, hey man, I gotta go, man, because I'm gonna go to church. Or Saturday night, I gotta go home, go to sleep, because I'm gonna go to church Sunday, and not thinking anything of it. Right. I feeling a little bad now, feeling a little convicted, knowing that it's wrong. But so So it was going kept that goes on for like a month and a half. Me still doing that until it came to a point like I'm in my apartment. My girlfriend she had left me, and she left me, and so I'm in my apartment by myself. Sunday morning, I had party all weekend, Friday, Saturday until Sunday morning. No sleep. I'm, I'm just high, drunk, and I mean it's already by Sunday morning. It's already kind of going down. I still haven't slept, and I just remember, man, I thinking about it. I was like, man, I need to change. I need to change, and so all these things starts playing back in my mind how God changed these guys, and so I remember getting down in my knee on my knees by the window at the apartment in my bedroom, and praying, and I remember I remember this like it's yesterday because I know that this is when God just completely set me free, and I say, no, God, if you're real like this, people are saying you are real. You could change my life. Take away, take away these drugs, this alcohol, this anger. I was full of anger and hate, and to take away all this, I said, I will serve you for the rest of my life. I don't want to live like this no more.
Yeah.
I remember praying that prayer, exactly those words, and getting up that morning, waited around for a little bit, took a shower, got ready, went to church that Sunday when I was asleep, and from that Sunday morning, I just something God did a miracle because I never touched drugs, man. Never went back to drugs. Never touched coke or heroin or weed or alcohol since that day.
Wow.
Like it just completely, and then the next week came around. I'm working, and the thing that we used to do after work, Fridays especially, we used to stop at the store, get a couple of beers. If we had some drugs, we just start doing drugs even at work, or we'll go after work, go connect some coke, and start doing it, on the way home, and then all the way to the weekends. So that's what we did. So it was three of us. We used to be together. Three of us, three guys used to work together all the time. It was a buddy, and then it was my brother, my older brother. We used to work together, and then it was me. I remember driving home, pulling up to my apartment. They already had done some. I hadn't done anything, and then we were pulling up to my apartment. My brother takes out a CD case. He's sitting in the middle, and he starts making some lines. He starts making some lines, and I see him. He made three of them. I was like, oh no. So I already told him, man. I told him I started going to church. I told him I was gonna, I was change. I'm gonna change, and I'm not gonna do it anymore. And no, but my brother makes me one line, and he does his. My buddy does his, and he tells me, here, you want one? And I look at him, and that was the very first time that I said no, to drugs, to coke. And I remember it, and I know that's the moment right there that it broke. Like
Right.
the very first time I said no, and my brother looked at me like, well, more for me. and and so that was the last time, that I did that, and I worked with them for a little bit longer. And then I finally ended up going somewhere else, and man, that's it. Ever since then, that's been it's gonna be 21 years this May that I haven't touched drugs, man. That God set me free, man. It's a miracle, man. Because no, I didn't go. Then I have to go to rehab. I was doing coke for at least 4 to 5 years. I did heroin for about a year. The last year, I had do it before. I'd done it before, but every now and then. But like for the last year, I was doing it more. But just snoring it. But yeah, so it was just from one day to another, man. God set me free. Broke that habit, broke that addiction, and I've been
Right.
And I look back, I'm like, man, like I was so horrible. Like all the money that I used to spend, all the stuff that I used to do, all the nights I didn't sleep,
Right.
It's just like, I mean, yeah, I thank God, man, because my kids could have been without a dad right now.
Right. Wow.
Mhm.
So you get saved, God delivers you from that, and then tell us a little bit, like what God starts doing in your life, like after you and your wife get married and all that. She starts seeing that you're going to church and all that. Well, y'all started going together, anyways, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that.
So
like,
we got saved. So after that, no, so she had left me. Well, we were going to church. Remember, I told you she left me. She moved out because she saw that I was still partying, and I didn't stop going to church. I was still partying and going to church. And I guess at the time, I mean, it was good that she left because that gave me time for me to think and think about things. And so we got saved. Uh, when we got saved, I mean, when that happened, I surrendered. Now we're talking about getting married. So she saw there was a change. It was changing. I was changing, and she saw. She's like, okay, let's. We're talking, and we talked to pastor. We separated. We separated for for a few months before we got um, married. And during that separation, some crazy things happened. Now that we have to deal with the past. The past came, and so we're about to get married, right? And so during the before I got saved, right before I got saved, I messed around. I you know got somebody pregnant, and and so now we're about to get married, and the other kid's mom, she comes and tells me, this is your kid. No, I'm gonna uh, this is your kid. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm not sure. I said, how do you know? I don't know if he's mine or not. Because I didn't know. Not that I was saying no, he's not mine. I just didn't know, but I knew that I had messed up before. And but I had already, when I got serious, God had told her, I said, I'm not messing around with you no more. I'm gonna get married.
right.
And and so uh, we're about to get married, and this is in my mind now. Right, a couple of months before we get married. So I talked to my wife, and I tell her, what, this is what happened. I said, first of all, I'm not the same guy. God changed me. You see, I said, so you could see. I asked him, can you tell that I changed? I said, oh yeah. And said, I'm not the same guy, but no matter what happened, I said, I just want to let you know that I love you. I'm not gonna stop going to church. I'm gonna take care of the kids. But this is what happened. The past, and so I said, this is. She said she just had the baby, and she's saying it's mine. I don't know, but just wanted to let you know before we get married. Of course, she got mad. She slapped me. She slapped me. I deserved it. She probably deserved more, but she slapped. She's like, no, you know what? Never. She got mad. She was brokenhearted. She said, oh, I'm not gonna marry you anymore. And I'm like, man. I said, what can I do? I understand. Uh, I know what I did was pretty bad. So we get so I keep on going to church, man. I keep on going to church. Like I told her, keep on seeing the kids and talk to pastor. See what happens. And little by little, she's we started talking again, and God, I guess God had put that love back in her, and because obviously it wasn't me. So she kind of talked to pastor, and she asked pastor, what do you think? And pastor told her, it's up to you. Whatever you want to do. I said, whatever you want to do. I said, but she saw that I was changed. And so we talked, and she said, okay, well, we ended up kind of, making up, and she forgave me, but with some conditions. She said, well, you gotta find out if he's your son, and first, and then we'll see. And then so we kind of pushed the wedding back. I think we were supposed to get married in November or December. We ended up getting married in January on her birthday. But so we yeah, so uh everything went smooth. After that, I got everything. I took a DNA test, and he was mine. I went and put myself on child support, and we got married. And then, man, so we've been married ever since then. We've been married ever since then. We've been married. We just turned 20 years married this this January. And the crazy thing, this is something very serious. That having another kid, and I thank God for my wife, because ever since ever since that happened, ever since she said, what, I forgive you, she has never thrown it in my face. She never brought it back. She understood, like, what, if I'm gonna forgive him, I'm gonna forgive him. I'm not gonna bring it out every time we have an argument. But she forgave me, man. She's like, thank God for her, because she's never threw it in my face at all.
Right.
She forgave me. When she said I forgive you, she really did. And she put it behind and moved on, and that's why we're still married today. And just we have we at the time, me and her, we had 3 kids when we got married, and then we had 4 more, so we have 7 kids now.
Nice.
Most of them, half of them are already grown up. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we go, I just wanna fast forward a little bit more real quick. So you're getting saved, I get married, and then for people who don't know, our fellowship is reach the lost, make disciples, plant churches, and send out couples. And so sometime later on, you get a disciple in the church, and you have a calling in your life, and you and your wife get called to preach. Can you tell just a little bit about that? Like, how was that? How did that come about? And just touch a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it was probably after we were saved for about. So we got saved in 2004. So maybe about. I mean, when after I got saved, um, after I got married and saved and then married, just going to church and going to first time going to a Bible conference that we have here in San Antonio, and hearing the preachers there. Now I'm hearing more preachers, and then we have revivals at the church and hear their testimonies and the calling, begin to understand the calling of God in their life. And God calls just simple men, simple people, just like me, to go preach. And so ever since then, maybe a couple of years after that, I felt God, like, what, I didn't save you just so you could, just sit here. I want to use you. And I knew that God, like, I was called to, to either to preach, just to do something, like, not just for myself. I understood that God doesn't save us for ourselves. He saves us for a bigger purpose. He has a lot more than just, what we see in front of us. So I knew that, God was calling me to preach. God would deal with me. I would get stirred up, about, when testimonies about men, being called to preach, people getting out of prison, getting out of jail, coming out of the streets, and they, God is using them to preach. I was like, man, I want to do that, And about 2012, that's when me and my wife we got sent out to start a church in the west side of San Antonio, here. So we were there. About from 13 to right before COVID happened. So it was like 19, maybe 2019. That's when we came back. But there, we stayed there for a few years, maybe 6 years, I want to say, and we labor there in the West Side. And we saw God do, man, amazing things. People got saved. It was awesome. It was a great time that we had, a great experience. A privilege for me to see that. What God, and not only that, but how God can use, just me and my wife like that, and my kids. At that time, all my kids were little, and they were all with me. So we had kids there. We were, just us alone. It was already, 9 of us. So we were there, and I mean, yeah, the God. I mean, we saw God did great things there in the West Side.
Cool. So okay, now you get brought, and then you come back home and send, and then because when I got there in 2020. You were already there. I think you had just got back. That's when I met you, right? Okay, now you come. Uh, so now what? Tell us. Just oh man, how do I say this? Like, just tell us a few things that God's been doing in your life in these past couple years since you've been back, and just little things that you want God to do in your family, in your life.
Yeah. Well, but ever since we came back, I think it was like in 19. Like I said, it was right before COVID. Because right after that, I remember COVID hit, and but ever since I came back, I mean, I just came back. I came back with a good attitude, and just, I mean, trying to whatever God wants me to do.
Right.
I made myself available. Whatever they want me to ask Pastor, what can I do here? Um, just trying to serve there. And whatever I can, whatever they need me. They ask me to usher. They ask me what I said. Whatever. Staying the same, doing the same thing. Now I'm back at the church, at the mother church. So still going to outreach. Just staying involved. That's what I'm mainly try to do. Staying involved and staying available to serve there. And that's pretty much. And then I mean, I remember. I don't know if Pastor remembers, but I remember when right before. Well, so I came back, and right when I came back, I asked Pastor, what do you think about this going to Mexico in this town? I had told him about going to Mexico, right? And he told me where you at. So I told him, which it was where I was raised, and I remember telling him that, and he said, "Well, go. Why don't you go and check it out?" So okay, I really wanted to go check it out, right? But so I went home. I went home that day, and I think I'm not sure if I told my wife that we're gonna go check it out, right? Talk to her about it, and my wife, she's like, she'll go anywhere, she was, she doesn't say, no, I won't go there, I won't go there. No, she said, anywhere. I'm not gonna say no. Who am I? She's like, who am I to say no? I'll go anywhere. God calls me. So I was excited. I wanted to go, and it hit me when I was thinking about it that night. It hit me like, hold on, man, I can't go out of the country right now, because I mean, I'm legal. My parents, another thing that my parents did, they brought us in, and they brought us in legal. They fixed our papers, they paid money, and they paid a lot of money, and then they did through the whole process. And they didn't bring us illegally. They brought us legally. Thank God. I didn't have to deal with that now that I'm older. But uh, I told my wife, we can't go out of the country. I said, I'm still on child support for my other kids. I have 2 kids. I'm on child support. So that was so I came back to Pastor and said, I can't go yet. I can't go out of the country yet. I said, at least not now, because I'm on child support. So that kind of stopped there, and then so I stay. I'm still there at church, and just serving. But so that, thank God, I just about a year and a half ago I finished paying child support. So now I've just been praying. Pray. Mainly I've been praying. What do you want me to do, God? And I'm not rushing it. Uh, I mean, I'm just pretty much, see what God wants to do.
Right.
I say, God, what do you want? I want it to be God. I want it to be God, and just because I want it to be God. tell me where does He want me, and not rushing it, and also and then so. And it's amazing, it's awesome that God just, during this revival, just God spoke to me through the evangelist. We had a revival last week, so the evangelist told me, I said, God has a place for you. Say, you don't worry about it. Don't want you to worry about it. God don't want you, and that's exactly what I've been praying for. I said, God, where do you want me? What do you want me to? I've been praying for direction, for guidance, and that's when God just answered me. Just during this revival, say, you know what? Said, God wants you to know that He has a place for you, and He doesn't want you to worry about it. He just do keep on, stay involved, do, step it up, stay involved. Just, mainly, mainly just keep on doing what you're doing. Maybe step it up a little bit, but so that's what I know. I'm just want to see what God has,
Right.
So thank, and then thank God, I have a couple of my kids are not in the church right now, but there's a couple of them that are saved. The little ones, thank God, and then my oldest son, uh, he's saved. He got married in the church. Thank God for him. So yeah, man. So
Nice. So just wanted to see them saved and stuff like that.
I want to see my kids saved, and that's one of the things that I worked on more when I came back on, because when you're out there, I mean, you have your kids, and just you and your kids, and but you also you're busy a lot,
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It just you have to find a balance to spend time with your family, and then maybe at the time I didn't maybe I did the best that I could, you know what I mean, the best that I knew what to do at the time. But when I came back, and now I'm not pastoring, I did worked on that, on the family, and I see a difference on my kids. I see a difference on my kids, that especially the little ones now.
Right.
So I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't do that out there, but it just I didn't know how to do it.
How to balance it and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, bro, since I've been there, and I mention this all the time, that when I got to the church, you're one of the guys I always just look at, because I'm like, dude, this dude got it. I'm not saying that you're just perfect, but I'm saying that the way I see you with your kids now, like, you are a good husband, and I see the way you are. You're a good dad, and so like really, bro, like you're doing a good job, and I've always told you that, and then I tell everybody that you and your family, I've always like looked up to, and of course I have questions and I ask you, because you're doing a real good job, bro, and that's something that you're everything that a dad is supposed to be. You're that in my eyes, and I really do mean that. Plus, you're saved, you're a man of God, and that's hard to find. So
It's I mean, it takes a lot of like, it takes a lot. I mean, it didn't. I want to say, though, it didn't come easy. I had to, some things I had to learn the hard way.
right,
Some things I wish I would have done different, but it just it just constant constant changing, constant learning. How to be a dad, how to be a father. How to live for God. It's constantly. There's always someone say there's always room for change.
right.
There's always room for improvement, and we have to do that. You know.
So before we go, I just want you to leave a few words, maybe some words of encouragement for anybody and listeners who maybe grew up similar backgrounds, or maybe they didn't. Just a few words that you'll leave people, before we go.
Well, one of the lies that I believed when I was younger, before I got saved, is that I couldn't change. That my life, that was it. The way it wasn't gonna change. That was my destiny. I the way I grew up, there were things I saw in my neighborhood, with my friends. I thought I was always gonna, that's what I was going. I was either gonna end up dead in prison, and there was no hope, there was no change. But you know what? That is a lie. That's a lie from hell. It's a lie from the devil. He just wants to keep you bound, and you can change. You can turn your life around. But it's only gonna be through the blood of Jesus Christ, because He's the only one. Because He's the one that died for you. He's the one that died for you, so you don't have to live the way you live. He died for you, so you don't have to die, so you can live. And that's the only way. Do not believe the lie that you cannot change, that the life is there's no hope. Only through Jesus Christ. That's pretty much what you. If you just believe that God has a plan, that God could change your life. If you just believe that, your life could be changed. Your life could turn around all the way. If you just believe that Jesus Christ is able to do that.
Thanks for watching. If you want to give your life to Jesus Christ, just pray this simple prayer with me real quick. Say, Father God, I'm a sinner in need of a Savior. I ask that you forgive me of all my sin. Come into my heart and be my Lord and Savior. I believe you died on the cross and rose the third day. Thank you for forgiving me of all my sin. If you prayed that prayer and you need a church to go to, come in, that number on the bottom of the screen. Come in contact with us, and we'll help you find a local church to go to and start living for God. Thank you.
Got 2 lanes on the one way. Got 2 lanes on the one way.